Good morning, everyone. This is Syya. Uh-oh, can we hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I'm just trying to do too many different things at once. And it's Erin Gregor.
And welcome to the Afterglow Live Recap Podcast. So what are we doing, guys? So what we do is we are the chapter chairs of Dallas Global Leaders Organization, and we're also the co-founders of Innovation Media Enterprises. So Global Leaders Organization, or GLO as we call it, puts on a weekly event speaker series. And we are excited. This week we had Mr. Vince Poscente. He is an Olympian and motivational speaker and just all around awesome guy. So what did he talk about today or this week was creating lasting impressions in a crazy time like now. How do you differentiate yourself? And how are you connecting with prospects and clients and creating that real lasting impression to really, really stand out in a crowd? So this week we've invited, as we all know, GLO member, but it's super excited to welcome the newest chapter. It is the Pittsburgh chair, Mr. Jay Fairbrother. Jay, welcome to Afterglow.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
So Jay, you're with MyB2BCoach and also just an amazing person. Can you help me understand why you decided to launch the Pittsburgh chapter and what is it about GLO that you liked that made you join?
So I was in the Young Entrepreneurs Organization here in Pittsburgh for about 17 years, and I was on the board for probably half that time and president twice. And I got so much out of belonging to that organization, and GLO is modeled somewhat similarly to the Young Entrepreneurs Organization. And I've known Michelle, the CEO of GLO, for 30 years as an entrepreneur through the Entrepreneurs Organization. And I think the world of her, and I really love the way GLO is structured and even some of the things that are differentiators for us with GLO compared to the other entrepreneurial communities that are out there.
Very cool. Very cool. So knowing that, the way that it's a big organization is supporting entrepreneurs, help me understand your business, MyB2BCoach.
Sure. So basically, we train salespeople. We ramp salespeople, and our niche is small to mid-sized companies, sales teams of maybe 2 to 15 people, where they're struggling with the growth of the sales team. Either they have turnover or they have a big disparity between the top performers and the bottom performers, or they just struggle ramping up the salespeople, the new salespeople, fast enough to get profitable. So we come in, the first thing we do is a full day facilitated sales strategy workshop. And that's not with the sales team, that's actually with the leadership team of the company. And it's to pull out and extract all the collective sales knowledge out of the leadership team and document that. And from that full day workshop, we create a roadmap basically that ends up being a 20 to 35 page document that becomes a future onboarding document for any new sales hires. And then at that point, whether the leadership team chooses to self-implement that training to the rest of the sales team, they can do that, or they can hire us to do individual coaching with each salesperson using that roadmap and an AI software that we use for coaching. That's pretty slick. So that's basically what we do at MyB2BCoach.
So you said a acronym that always tickles me, AI. What exactly does that mean to you guys? Artificial intelligence has so many different definitions.
Yeah, so this software, it will identify things like rate of speech, how many questions, how much time you're speaking versus your prospect, the number of switches through the call, identifies certain keywords that you want a salesperson to be using, and then identifies sort of negative filler words that you want them to minimize the use of. So the software itself is nice. It's by itself, you only learn so much without a coach walking you through that. But the software is helpful in identifying things that, objectively sometimes you don't hear.
I would love for that to follow me around all the time, not just in sales.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, that was like, we need to talk. How did you guys arrive at that? Because that's a different angle on coaching and improving sales performance. How'd you guys come up with that idea? Is this your own software, or are you using a third party?
We are using a third-party licensed software that we white label. And yeah, it's really interesting. There's more and more of this kind of technology out there these days, and it really does help. And it's also it helps keep and get the salesperson's attention as you're coaching them, because they've got all these visual displays up there while you're going through the recorded call and coaching them on it.
You know what you should add is like have it where you got like a little device and then it zaps you when you say the wrong things while you're talking to somebody. You're like, oh, I don't want me to say that. I'm going to say it this way. That way you could just write real time experience.
Yeah, not sure that's legal.
No, that guy, I'm going off on a tangent, but he actually was on Shark Tank. He had that device. It's like Pavlov's Law, where it was Ramit, the guy who wrote I'll Make You a Millionaire, I'll Make You Rich. He had this thing where it was like it would buzz you if you were doing certain things you weren't supposed to or something. So I don't know. They got around it. It was pretty different, but you never know.
I love that is really cool. So, okay. So why don't we, I want to keep talking about that, what you do. That sounds really cool. I mean, with my background being in sales, I think I would absolutely embrace taking that opportunity. So I know you said you focus more on the smaller, but have you ever had like divisions or smaller groups of like in the enterprise space interested in your techniques and strategies?
Sometimes, but it's really, so a lot of what we solve for is the frustrations that entrepreneurs go through when they're first building their sales team, because typically they don't have, a roadmap or a really solid onboarding process. And so that's kind of our sweet spot is to hit companies of that size. And as companies grow and the sales team gets larger, they typically they've created that process already. So we don't come in and the other thing we don't do is we don't come in and try to enforce a methodology. Like if they've been trained already in Sandler or spin selling or any of those other programs, we're not going to try to supplement or take that away. They can continue to do that. We're going to try to strengthen it. And what we see, once people go through, we recommend a 10-session, 12-week individual coaching program. And what we do there is create deliberate practice. So it's not just kind of like, okay, let's review this week's call every week. We're focused on objections one week, and we're focused on email sequences one week and social selling one week, in addition to reviewing calls through the software. So it really takes sales knowledge and turns it into skill, and we're developing the muscle memories of the sales skills that they're using.
Sold. That is so cool. I am like, okay, we definitely need to talk more about that, and I want to.
We need to get them on Innovation Calling.
I was just going to say that, Erin. We want to get on our other podcast
where we actually talk technology. Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, all right. So let's talk about Vince Poscente. He is an Olympian, mountain downhill ski racer, and just all around great guy, motivational speaker, extraordinarily passionate about differentiating yourself. I mean, I see him now ever since the whole pandemic started. He pivoted instantly and started creating content in different ways to connect with his audience. So, guys, let's talk about this. How do we get from good to better? What was your first impression, Erin?
And I think this word, it's the E word. It's come up so many times. And I think experience is going to be one of the biggest things people have to consider, especially in time of COVID. Like, how do you create great experiences? It's like the retail spaces had to look at just hanging some stuff on a rack isn't enough. How do I create experiences all around this? How do you, he was talking about like, speaking and setting on a story, but you always have to be thinking, what's your customer's journey? How can you create that experience? How can you stand out from your competition through experience? It was one of the biggest big points he talked about, but definitely a theme coming up over and over again in quarantine, as we're experiencing COVID and quarantine. But the winners that really consider experience and the look and the feel and the entire process as a whole, not just I have a product, let's sell it and you go buy it. Those companies are going to come out the winners of 2020 and beyond.
Yeah, since we were just talking about the software, that I've had owned 9 businesses over the last 30 years, and I've built many sales teams and done sales training for 30 years. And what I notice is that the first time you coach someone with that AI software, it really almost is an experience, because it's just so different and unique to them. They've been coached before by other people, but when you're doing it with that software, you can see the sort of wonderment in their eyes, and it kind of creates an experience.
And you know what the funny thing is, when you actually create a solid experience, you're creating a memory. You're triggering an emotion, right? So he had this definition. He calls it anatomy of a conversation. It's your eyes, head, and heart. Guys, how would you define how he wrote out eyes, head, and heart? Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts on that, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a good point, and what I took from that is you can't leave one out. In every conversation and every message, you need to try to be using all 3. And the first thing I thought about is that I have a very bad habit of not looking into the webcam when I have a bad habit of looking at my computer and not into the webcam when I'm doing, the 1,000 Zoom calls that I do every week. And it just hit me that, I really need to be focused more on that, just to make that connection, that personal connection. And then the other interesting thing is when we broke out after the main session for the premium members of GLO into the breakout session, where we had another half hour one-on-one with Vince, I asked him for some tips in terms of, because I'm doing so many Zoom sales calls every day, that sometimes I feel like my presentations become too rote, and that I'm not being authentic and not using my heart and head and eyes in every single call. So I asked him for some tips on that, and it was interesting because he took it immediately to a sports, kind of prep performance, and he suggested rubbing your hands together before calls, just to, and if you do that, you can actually feel your body like come alive a little bit. And just to kind of break that monotony of doing the same presentation over and over again. So I really like that.
Erin, that just reminds me, like, for you, you're like one of the most competitive people I know. I mean, you guys, my favorite story with Erin, she said one day, hey, let's join a boot camp. And it was like a 5:30 a.m. session. And every time she showed up at 5:30 in the morning, she was always out running up front. Like the coach would be like, run laps. And I'd be like the last person, and Erin would lap me. And I just remembered asking her once, I'm like, what the hell? What's motivating? What keeps you going? So Erin, what is your strategy? Like when you got that performance need, do you, rub your hand like, Vince had suggested? What do you do to cope, if you will, to get you focused and stay focused?
Well, so this is interesting. I don't know if I'm doing something, I don't really think like, it's just, I have to be head. I don't know. I'm just like that. But I think kind of taking it back to the eyes, head, and heart. I talked about this a few weeks ago, but just read a book called Aesthetic Intelligence. I was pulling up, so I knew. And I am very bad at this way. Like I'm very black and white. Like I'm very like, here's the content. What do you need? Like, and not thinking about like, even, that touch of that, thinking of it at a bigger picture. I'm not like a normal girl in the sense of I want to create, like I was talking to these women because we're in a book club, and they were like, well, in my house, I create a whole experience. I want to know, like, I want you to smell a certain scent, and I want you to feel a certain way when you walk into my home. I'm like, what? Like, I'm just like, yeah, here's my house. What do you need? But all of these things, like working with a client, like how are you connecting with them? Do they feel your passion? Do they feel are you intentionally walking into that sales call with, I want, my business is my passion. I want to put it all out on the line. Or are you just like, here it is, here's the numbers. What else do you need? And really connecting all the dots to, connect with them on all different levels. I know it's something I have to be, it just doesn't come naturally for me. I have to be very intentional to think of everything versus just, here it is, take it or leave it.
Well, I think you're very practical, and I think you're very execution driven, right? And sometimes, I mean, obviously that has to be a component of it. Excuse me. But sometimes, yeah, I guess in some ways where it's like, as long as you're communicating from a place of authenticity, though, I think that passion for you from a process perspective to get things done and execute is the same as if someone was rah-rahing it, if that makes sense. And it was a question I asked in the VIP session, which was, well, what's the difference? Well, actually, no, I think I do it in the regular session, which was, well, it's easier for an extrovert to put together, a video, for example, right? But what about the introverts out there, the ones that they're just not as comfortable? Are they going to be, at a loss because of that, right? Like, are they going to be considered, behind if they can't, execute on it? And what he said, and I thought I loved it, was, as long as you're authentic and being who you are and you're being real, everyone will know that you're not going to be a cheerleader type. But if whatever topic you're talking about, the passion and the belief system will come out on its own. So Jay, when you're hearing that, right, when you're thinking with your head, he said, give them the info that is either innovative or counterintuitive. What did you think about that? As far as, did you have an opinion, to agree, disagree?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I've practiced that in the past. In fact, I have an email sequence campaign going out, for prospecting right now. And one of my email subject lines, everyone's heard of the 80-20 rule, right? So my subject line on my email is, have you heard of the 20-80 rule? And that's basically a typical situation on sales teams where 20% of the salespeople produce 80% of the results. And that kind of disparity is not healthy for your sales team and organization. So that subject line for the email gets huge open rates.
Can I go back to the introvert versus extrovert things? I don't think you're at a disadvantage if you're an introvert of showing passion, because so introvert to me is, you get your energy from silence. Like, you go, like, for me, I would do the summit for three days, and I would have to hide for 2 weeks just because I was drained, right? Extrovert, you get your energy by being around people, right? So I think as an introvert, it's not that they're not passionate, they still have a lot of passion. And I think too, like with videos, it's a matter of knowing where your place is. Okay, I know I'm on video, I want to talk about this. Like, introverts can get very passionate. It doesn't mean they can't go out and do a video because they don't like to talk. They can go out and do that. It's just they need to recharge at home. So I agree with the sense of, if there's passion, don't let being an introvert hold you back from getting out there and talking and being passionate about it.
Yeah, I have a great story around that. So, sales was one of the first jobs I ever had as a teenager and in college. And then I was bartending, and, all things that require you to be very extroverted and outgoing, right? So I kind of always thought I was an extrovert. And I attended, I believe it was an educational event with an organization like GLO, where there was a sales trainer, and he was talking about introverts and extroverts in sales. And he said, and he was speaking in terms of doing a sales training to training other people. And he said, an introvert and an extrovert can execute that sales training equally as well. You're not at an advantage being one or the other. He said the difference is, at the end of that, if you just did a 4-hour sales training, at the end of the sales training, the extrovert's like, let's go party, let's go out to the bar. And the introvert's going to be, I need a nap. And that's really the difference, because of the energy that it takes the introvert to generate to do that 4-hour training is exhausting.
Oh, I just took it as unhealthy coping mechanisms. And so just going to the bar in general was just the way to go. But okay, I like what you're saying on that, you guys. So let's talk about this. So when we're talking about creating these experiences, and we're talking about, connecting. So he had this 4 bullet point. It was like, start with a point, And he said, when people start telling stories, they tell the story and make it more like a parable where there's a moral at the end of it. He's actually saying, make your point early on, tell your story, connect with them, and then close off with that ending point. Can you guys give me an example, or do you think that you agree? If you tell someone up front, I'm going to tell you why, I don't know. I had an idea on this one. So let's talk about the parable of the tortoise and the hare, right? It's a race between a bunny and a tortoise or turtle, right? If anyone doesn't know it, that was my half-assed thing. But anyway, he says make your point at the very beginning, meaning he's saying the fastest being doesn't always win the race. That's the message, right? And he says state that right away and then tell your story, so that way the people that you're talking to can kind of get in and jump in and understand where you're going with it. His example was he's a former downhill mountain skier, so he actually would climb up on a chair in his motivational speeches with a background of mountains to set the tone, right? And that was the point of his story, of his experiences. Do you agree that you should say it in the beginning, or do you think it should be at the very end? And I totally stumbled that, you guys. I apologize. But Erin or Jay?
Well, to your point, though, and what he said too was, instead of really make that point that you're trying to get across, I don't want to use the term controversial, but like to your point of tortoise and the hare, listen, the fastest isn't always going to, or to Jay's point, the 20, everybody knows 80-20, but 20-80 is really where it's at. Oh, really? Well, that's a challenge. So why is that? So it kind of gets you like off guard, and then to go that route and bring them in, because they're going to lean in a little bit and be like, this isn't what we normally. That's what I took from his talk too. So the tortoise and the hare, like I said, being a good example of that. If you've never heard the story before, if you had heard the story, you could even challenge it and say, I think the fastest always wins, and then lead them into that, if that makes sense. That's what I got from what he was saying about that. I don't know, Jay, if you think differently.
I like that, Erin. I think combining that, be unconventional with your tagline as the initial point is a great way to lead into that story. In teaching sales, I use stories all the time and teach people to use stories, but it's how you use them too that makes a difference. Like people want to talk about features and benefits, and they're quick, sometimes too quick, to jump to their benefit as soon as it's relevant to the conversation. And what I always say is, hold that benefit back. Tell a story that illustrates the benefit. Don't just use we offer a better quality widget than everybody else because of how long it lasts without needing maintenance. Tell a story about that, because those words that I just said are really pretty empty and everybody can say them. So tell a client story and hook it to that benefit is how I like to teach salespeople.
So that's a great question. How guilty are we of selling features?
I think it's honestly, I think every person naturally goes there. I think you have to be it's just an automatic thing to do, because we get really excited about our features, right? Like we got great features in our product or service. Everybody goes there because that's what you've developed. But I think you intentionally have to go and really look at, nobody cares. So, nobody cares about those things. What's in it for me? That's all. I don't give a crap about your features. What does it do for me?
And on the subject of passion and authenticity, so one of the other things that I do, I'm going to do a plug here, is for people who do not qualify to get into GLO, I am doing peer advisory groups. I'm doing them. I'm starting locally right now, but I'm going to roll them out virtually as well, so people can be from anywhere. And in my experience, I've been in like 6 peer groups over the years. I was in one for 17 years where we met every single month. The same group of people, same group of entrepreneurs. And there's nothing I've ever done as an entrepreneur that's more powerful than these peer groups. And I'm thrilled that GLO is going to be rolling out peer groups, forum peer groups shortly that the premium members can join. So when I'm doing these sales calls for these peer groups, I mean, there's no faking it, because I truly, I cannot say there's anything I've ever done as an entrepreneur that's more powerful than getting together with other 8 to 10 smart entrepreneurs in a room every month, trying to help each other solve each other's problems. So I'm really excited to be building that. And as I mentioned earlier, I've done so many calls on these, talking to people about the power of peer groups, and it's difficult because until you've been in a peer group like that, it's very, very hard to understand how powerful they are and how much value they can bring. So even with all that passion and authenticity, sometimes I feel like, I'll catch myself in the middle of a call going, I'm kind of going through the motions here. I need to ratchet it up.
I love it. I'm excited at the prospect of creating these peer groups and forums, as we're talking about. And for those that may or may not be familiar, a couple weeks ago, we had Mo Falfelbab join us, and he is one of the huge advocate creators of the forum concept. And it's not just a mastermind. It is much more in-depth, and it's much more, I mean, for lack of a better term, Jay, how is it? It's much more in-depth than a mastermind. It's more than that. It's really deeper relationships. It's getting to know each other as humans, I guess, versus a mastermind typically is focused on the business itself. Is that the best way I can describe the difference?
Yeah. So if these forum groups are facilitated correctly, and that's a key right there. The trust that forms among the members and the bonds that form. I mean, most of my lifelong friends have grown out of people I've been in forums with. It's really incredible. And obviously, initially, when you're in a forum, it's all business. But after you're in a group for a couple of years, people start to, transition, and they're talking about very personal things. And so confidentiality is very important. Mutual respect is very important. I always start if I'm facilitating, I always start our meetings with, look, doesn't matter how large your business is or how large your bank account is. When we walk into this room, we're all equals. And that just, kind of sets the stage for building trust and rapport.
No, I love it. So I want to give a shout out to Leslie Flores from Moments by Design, Andy Bird. Thank you so much for commenting. I love your comments here, as well as Mike Weiner. Thank you for joining us as well. And I think there's a whole slew of people that we're liking. So I really appreciate the comments. So let's try to wrap this up here. So Jay, I really appreciate your time here, and welcome to the GLO family. I can't wait to see what you do with Pittsburgh. If for those that want to get a hold of you in the Pittsburgh area, or just want to learn more about MyB2BCoach and that awesome AI platform and how you guys integrate it, how can they get a hold of you?
My email is jayf@myb2bcoach.com. But if you don't catch that, my name's pretty unique. If you Google Jay Fairbrother, you'll find me pretty easily.
Awesome. And Erin? Yeah, I'll do the GLO pitch. Obviously, as Syya's discussed, we are GLO, are the Dallas co-chapters of GLO. I was trying to word that without, but if you visit with GLO, WITHGLO, it stands for Global Leaders Organization, you can join, and we'd love to have you as a premium member here at the Dallas chapter, or if you're watching through Jay and you're in Pittsburgh, join Jay's Pittsburgh team. But just a really great opportunity to connect. As Jay was saying, there is a criteria to join. It's not just for anyone who labels themselves an entrepreneur. Very important to know. But and then these sessions, you can, if you're a member, we've got we're not just a session, you get 15 extra minutes with the speaker, but you can watch these free all through social at Thursdays at 10 a.m. Central, see what you think, and then come join us afterwards.
Absolutely. And there's so much more to these business organizations, you guys. You do have to put into it to get out of it. And I think that's one critical thing. I think sometimes we just assume if we can take, and then, where's the benefit from it? You really have to put some investment into it. And on that note, next week, October 8th, I'm really excited, Erin. We've heard so much innovative strategies for professional development and personal growth with Nina Vaca. So you guys sign up on that, as well as this is actually very specific. Erin, Dallas, Erin and I are really excited. Dallas chapters, chairs, got together with Vancouver and Mexico City. And not Vancouver. Why did I say Vancouver? Toronto. Oh my God, I just screwed that one up hard.
Yeah, it's in Canada. It's okay.
Brent,
Syya.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you got above the border. Who cares? where it
Sorry,
was?
Brent. Okay, so Brent Ritchie over in Toronto, not Vancouver. I don't know why I said Vancouver. And Mexico City, Carlos Albaran. We actually are hosting a panel on USMCA. That's the United States, Mexico, and Canada Agreement. That is NAFTA 2.0. What does it mean to you? For us, it means to think globally. We're not just entrepreneurs. We're not small business owners. We're entrepreneurs. We're looking at the global impact of our businesses and what that means. So definitely October 13th. That's a Tuesday. That's different. But we just were so excited with the panel that we have. We have representatives from each country. In fact, on the Mexico City side was actually one of the authors on the Mexico delegation and representation. So if you want to hear it from the horse's mouth, definitely go there. And then October 15th, we've got Building a Culture of Freedom and Responsibility with Patty McCord. Another great speaking engagement. So guys, a lot of stuff coming down the pipe. Go to withglo.com. And on that note, guys, I think that wraps it up for another episode of the Afterglow Live Recap podcast. Have a great weekend and be safe, everyone.
Bye.